We are looking at again PhD research, and the first two words that come to my mind is focus and narrow down. In the area that you like to do the research, something new in the area where you find the knowledge gap. The knowledge gap means you read the literature that was published recently, 5 years, and from the point where you are before 5 years, just collect all those articles, and even beyond that sometimes, to collect all the articles that are researched and published. And you read in order to, in relation to the particular area, when you focus and narrow down the area that you like to do, um, even in terms of development, social development, or community development, for example, you can come to sometime participatory and even beyond participatory, what is realistic views of development, and there you can see both the local or regional and global um, articles, and also papers, and also PhD thesis, and books that are published in that area that gives an idea where there is a gap, something to be found, something to be emphasized as something new. This helps us a lot to find out exactly where we can focus and narrow down, and that area can be blurred at the beginning, but then you can, as much as you read, as wide as you read, then you start understanding whether you have some knowledge gap or not. Only when you recognize the knowledge gap, then you go to what could be your contribution. And but that when you start thinking about what could be your contribution, there can also be reading a bit more done in some literature in order to see how that contribution can be substantiated with solid evidence of data, both in the literature. You can also borrow from somebody else who has done some field research and interpret it into the way of justifying your hypothesis. So, in that sense, research means finding new in the area that no one uh, does want to do research, no one has done something, or no one has found a new solution to an old problem. And so, in order to do that, sometimes it's always good to even write the whole research idea into one sentence. Try to write. It's the hardest thing to do, but it is always worth trying to do this. And then that sentence keeps changing and varying. This is not a title, this is not necessarily a hypothesis, but this can be something that can try to put those words into what you think as an idea, and it can keep changing. And then around those words, you can start writing what those words means. Even for me, it is a knowledge gap. I use the word knowledge gap, which is a word which is difficult for us, the person, to sometimes understand. The knowledge gap is where you find an idea which is not emphasized by the scholars before you in that particular area, or there's a problem which is not completely addressed with the solutions that are suggested. So you have something, a solution which would address the problem more than those theories that exist before or the ideas exist before. So in many ways, that is the way one can describe a sentence into an abstract one paragraph that would help you to develop a bit more thoughts putting into the description of the ideas. So you can ask some questions. What would make this new? How it would be relevant to your context if you want to be relating to your context or to the academic context that you are thinking of linking yourself into. What are the objectives of your research? What are you aiming to achieve at the end of the day? And if you're writing down 3 points, the kind of aims of this project, what are the areas that this idea would touch? And what is the problem this new idea tends to address? So these are the kind of questions that you can ask to write down that paragraph, one paragraph. And then you can also introduce the research context. It is important for you to introduce the broader context of the research in few sentences. That broader area into which the research falls. So you keep that picture of the broader area either into a picture or into a graph or into a kind of yearly description, how that idea has developed so far through the years. And then you can also put your own research in that line of thinking. That would be making life easier to draw the picture. And And then, this is where we are also trying to continuously find out, is there anyone else? You can have discussion with your friends, colleagues, and tutors and others. Is there anyone else who had this kind of similar idea that you are thinking as something new? If that is similar, then you can go and find what way you would differ from them and how far you would take that further, that idea. And that's where the literature review comes. And it's important that whenever we refer to an idea or a person, we always make notes of that person, from which book you have drawn, which place you have drawn, and the date that you have drawn. And even in the website, you can always put that as a kind of record so that we don't fall into the plagiarism issues. Plagiarism is copying somebody else's idea without referring to them, and also you referring them very often in a dominant way into our literature. Um, that's also minor plagiarism. So we need to make sure that we bring our own argument with the substantial evidence from our own data. That's very important. And then we develop this into research.